Welcome to the YCNU podcast. Join us each week for engaging conversations with campus leaders, students, faculty, staff, alumni, and community members. From academics to athletics, campus life, and beyond, we cover it all. Have someone you want to hear from? Let us know. Let's explore the world of Yavapai College together.
Christina Goldsmith, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Can you please give me an introduction and tell us here in the audience about your role here at Yavapai College? A little quick introduction about yourself and your background.
Yes, of course. So as you said, my name's Christina Goldsmith. I'm an instructional designer in TELS, which is the Teaching and E-Learning Support Office here at the college. And our primary role is supporting both faculty and students with online learning and educational technologies.
Wonderful.
And as part of my role, I'm also part of the micro-credential committee, which is a new initiative here at the college. New-ish initiative here at the college. A lot of people are probably just now starting to hear about it.
Yeah. And new to you as well, right? You told me earlier today here that you kind of just fell into it and now you run that program. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So I run it with the help of a committee and, lots of support behind the scenes. But so the foundation for micro-credentials actually started, I've heard, about 4 years ago. But I was brought in and became part of the committee in November of last year. And when 2024, yes, that's correct. And when they were looking for somebody to sort of lead the charge and develop processes and bring, micro-credentials really to life and embed it, here in the culture at the college, they decided on TELS and instructional designers because a big part of micro-credentials has to do with learning outcomes and assessing learning and measuring and alignment between those learning outcomes and the activities. So that's part of what we do in TELS when we're working with developing online courses. So it was just sort of a natural fit for micro-credentials to be part of what TELS does.
Wonderful. Thank you. I know this is a big topic for us, so let's dive right in. I got a few questions here for you for us to really explore what this is and what this is not and all that. So let's just start with the first thing. Tell us what micro-credentials are, what they are not, because obviously there's a lot of misconceptions about it, and how they differ from traditional degrees and certifications.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people have probably heard the phrase digital badges or just badges. That might be something you're more familiar with. So a great way to sort of put micro-credentials in the whole learning ecosystem is to think the traditional degrees and certificates, those might be considered a macro credential. There's a lot of learning and different skills that you pick up as part of a larger degree program. Right. So a micro credential is going to be just that. It's going to be a micro part of that larger credential that you have. So it is recognition for a specific skill or competency. And one definition that I really like, that I feel like really encompasses all that micro-credentials can be, is that it's a way to verify or recognize learning that's additional to, alternate to, complementary of, or a formal component of that formal degree or certificate. So really, it's a flexible way of recognizing, again, those specific skills, competencies, or knowledge that our learners gain.
Love it. Can you give us like an example of this hierarchy of macro-credential, maybe a certification, and then a micro-credential underneath? Like, just paint the picture for us here. Would it be something like a business degree is your macro, marketing is a certification inside that macro, and then maybe a Facebook, ad expertise, that's a micro-credential. Does that make sense? Like, how does it kind of create, like, who is the grandparent, who is the parent, and who is the child of all this?
Yeah, absolutely. You actually did a great job there, just illustrating this idea of micro versus macro. But let me ask you, like, for in your past, like what degrees or certificates have you earned that brought you where you are today?
Right. I have a communications and marketing bachelor's degree.
Okay. So that would be the macro credential.
Okay.
But along the way, in communications and marketing, what would you say is a skill or some skills that you picked up through the courses that you took to earn that degree?
Right. Like the courses would be, I had research, media, statistics, anthropology. I mean, there was a lot of all of these subcategories that all made up what marketing was.
Yeah, absolutely. So then looking at your statistics, of course, you probably learned some statistical analysis. Maybe you learned some specific programs for interpreting statistics. Or maybe in research, you learned how to critically read or be a critical thinker. Right. So those are skills that you developed as you were working towards this macro credential degree in communications and marketing. So a micro credential would focus on those specific skills.
Right.
If that helps illustrate.
Oh, totally, absolutely. And I think especially in today's, technology-driven careers and everything else that we have, that we need in terms of tools to be able to do work, right? I think there's so many micro credentials that go into it. Like, for instance, your degree is in business, but you need to know Microsoft Word and Excel and, these things. Like, so being a specialist or acquiring that skill and knowing how to use that tool would kind of fit in that micro credential.
Yes, exactly. Okay. But actually more and more employers are focusing on these skills over degrees. So that's not saying degrees are going away, right. But when you come to an employer with a degree, they want to know, okay, but what can you do?
Right.
And sometimes students really struggle with being able to communicate what those specific skills were that they picked up. Especially this can be a challenge for general education courses that are, wrapped into a degree program. For example, my degree and my background's in education and with an English and humanities emphasis, but I still had to take chemistry. Right. So for a lot of students, not understanding the purpose of a course leads to like a lack of motivation for the course. They just want to get through it. They want to check it off the list. But when they're able to see the connection between the skills that they're picking up. So I had to learn to read data and I had to learn to, think scientifically. And that definitely applies to education.
Perfect. Yep.
So by being able to micro-credential those professional skills within our academic programs, students are then able to make those connections and find like the value in the courses that they're taking and how it's going to relate to their future as a professional.
Absolutely. Thank you. We already covered a little bit of this, but why are micro-credentials becoming so important in today's education and workforce landscape? You kind of touched on it, but give me a little bit more of a deep dive on this. What has changed? Why is this so much more important now? And why are micro-credentials so important to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So like we were talking about, employers are more and more interested in what the learners and earners that they're hiring can do once they come out of their schooling. And so some of those skills that they're actually looking for more, like you mentioned, micro-credentialing technical skills like Microsoft Word or Excel. Like I have this skill, I can use Microsoft Office. So you won't have to train me on that when you hire me. But more and more, they're actually looking for what we call durable skills or soft skills. So communication, critical thinking, professionalism, teamwork, those are the skills that employers want the people they're hiring coming to the workforce already having. They don't want to have to teach those skills themselves.
And are not necessarily part of the macro curriculum anyways, right? I mean, leadership, that's a thing that you work for. you used to learn that as you start kind of having jobs and start working with a company, with a team and all that. So it's a perfect way to acquire that skill before you have to go through, your career and a few years at least employed somewhere to learn that.
Exactly. And there's opportunities here at the college for students to definitely develop those skills, whether it's through clubs and organizations, whether it's through, student government. Students can pick up these leadership skills even within their courses, as long as they're being taught that skill. And then the micro-credential allows, the faculty or a mentor or a club leader to be able to say, this student shows this skill or demonstrates this skill consistently and in this way.
Right.
So that way, then we can provide that micro-credential that shows or verifies that.
Right.
So then when that student goes out into the workforce, they're able to say, yes, like this is what I did. And this is how I've shown this skill in the past. Because sometimes students, they struggle making that connection or communicating that.
Right.
So when the, employer in the interview asks, what's your leadership style?
Right.
They don't know. They've been a student their whole life, or,
right.
Maybe they've, been in the workforce. A lot of our students are, employed and working full time while they're coming to school, but they haven't pictured themselves or imagined themselves in a leadership position.
Right.
So they don't know how to answer that question. But so this also is a way to help students recognize those skills and where they've picked them up.
Right.
So they're ready to communicate that to employers. And another great thing with micro-credentials is it provides a way for, we say learners and earners because, it may not just be students getting micro-credentials. It may be somebody who's graduated, but they're trying to upskill and, bring on new skills and make themselves, more marketable in the workforce.
Yep.
So I like to say, or you'll hear in micro-credential communities, they'll say learners and earners because they're learners, but they're also out there and they're earning. So it creates a pathway for them to be able to increase their earning potential and their employability along the way to those macro credentials. So a great example might be somebody who starts out as part of the sales team somewhere, but then they, take these courses, or these few classes, and they develop like this communication and this leadership and this teamwork skill.
Mm-hmm.
And they're able to use that to work towards maybe a certificate in business management or an associate's degree, or, so they're part of that pathway, but it gives them these breadcrumbs along the way. So they can use those and maybe they can move up to a team lead position or an assistant manager position as they're working towards that larger macro credential or that degree.
Mm-hmm. And you said something really cool there too. When we talk about our students here, we're not just simply talking about someone who is entering the workforce for the very first time. You're 18, 19, 20-year-old trying to get their first job. We're talking about your 25, 30, 40, 50-year-old that's kind of looking for a promotion, looking for a career change, or, just someone who maybe has the macro credential, has the degree in education, but is trying a new career in sales and marketing. I mean, these micro credentials then become very important for you to be able to make these moves, right? To kind of change or just upgrade or just switch paths in your career.
Yeah, so that's definitely another role that micro credentials have. So I work really closely with academics, so I could talk a long time about micro-credentials and academics, but there's definitely that workforce focus as well and how these inspire or encourage or enable lifelong learning.
Yeah.
So like you said, that person they've already got their degree. So a great example I like to use is artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I graduated and probably when you graduated, artificial intelligence
wasn't a thing.
It wasn't a thing. But now to be relevant, especially in marketing or education, we have to be adept at artificial intelligence, knowing what its uses are and how to apply it for our work. So if, out there in the workforce, I would be looking for a credential that says, I am skilled at using artificial intelligence and applying it to my work or supporting teachers with artificial intelligence or, because that might be the leg up that I need to be able to move into other positions in the future or even to be able to stay just relevant in my current position.
Exactly. Just to continue your education, continue your, your evolution in your own career. I mean, that we more and more need these upgrades, right? These bumps so that we can continue to be relevant and continue to be successful in what we do. How are the micro-credentials here important for the education institutions? We talked about how important they are for learners, for employers, how it creates kind of an optimal shortcut for you to upgrade, to switch, to just continue to be relevant and all that. How is micro-credentials important now for educational institutions like Yavapai College? Why are we in this right now?
Yeah. So, well, of course, one, as a community college, we are marketing to our community, like our students and our employers. So our students are looking for degrees, courses, training that's going to get them into the workforce.
Right.
So part of our role in this community is to connect those learners with the employers in the area and making sure that they have the relevant skills to go into the workforce. But I think, the thing that is most beneficial for both students and for the institution, for Yavapai College, is providing these on-ramps to further education. So I know for me personally, it took me 10 years to get my bachelor's degree. And there's a lot of students who look at that, they're juggling families and work or finances.
Sure.
And they're saying, I can't do a 4-year degree, but maybe they can take these 3 classes that lead to this certificate that also has this micro-credential attached to it that's going to lead to a little bit more earning potential, which is going to take care of some of that financial strain.
Right.
And then after they do those 3 classes, they be like, oh, well, it's only, 2, 3, 4 more. And then I can get this one that's going to lead to this other position or prepare me for this other position.
Right.
So it's the idea of those breadcrumbs, where 4 years might be really intimidating and overwhelming to think about. Being able to take baby steps, like, okay, I can't do a 4-year degree right now, but I can do this. And then once that learner does that, then the next step doesn't seem as intimidating.
Yeah.
And so then they're able to kind of continue along that pathway. And with that encouragement of having the learning that they're doing along the way recognized.
Right. I love that example that if you are entering the workforce or if you are just planning for a career change in your life, sometimes this idea of, I have to go back to school and learn, get a new degree on something else so that I can then, work in business. But boy, I don't have that time. I need a job right now. I need a career change right now. That overwhelm that comes from just the idea of having to get a new degree so I can, move in a different direction. That kind of dissipates and goes away when you think that there's a different path for that. There's a different way to accomplish the same thing. But right now, right, you can construct that path with micro-credentials. Micro-credentials, for example, and kind of make that reality, that future a reality, right? Make that future a lot shorter, a lot closer to you just by doing that.
Exactly. It makes it feel a lot more attainable.
It's wonderful. And this is a thing that I know Yavapai College kind of spends a lot of time and effort in building these opportunities for our students, through all of our career and technical education courses, other departments like the REDC. I mean, we spend a lot of time really kind of thinking about all these different ways to get people the employment, get people the careers that they need right now. Obviously, we have the path for the 4-year degree. We have a new degree now that is 3 years, and hopefully we'll have a variety of other degrees that are going to fit into that format sometime soon here. But 3 years might still be too long for a lot of us, right? And that's where all these micro-credentials kind of come in super handy, because you can get a leg up into that industry, into that job right now if you can. Because how long are, in general, hang on a second, because I have a question that you can answer that question. Describe a little bit the micro-credential programs at Yavapai College, what we currently offer, their focus areas, and just kind of tell me a little bit of how long these micro-credentials sometimes can be, a month, 2 months, 3 months, so we understand a little bit of what do we offer here at Yavapai College and how long are these programs?
Yeah. So a little bit of background. We just got, so Canvas Credentials is our micro-credentialing platform. You know, it works right along with Canvas, which is where our online courses are all at. So that's what we use for our platform. And we actually just launched our first micro-credentials in Canvas Credentials the end of January, I believe it was.
Okay.
So this is still very new. We're still rolling it out. We're in phase 1, so to speak. So what phase 1 has looked like is a lot of professional development. It has primarily been focused on staff and faculty.
Okay.
I'm very proud to say we're currently offering 23 badges for staff and faculty.
Nice.
And we've awarded 342.
Oh, wow.
So
that's
yeah,
really cool.
yes,
for something that started in January. We're in June. So
yes,
that's amazing.
just since January. So, we do have one student facing badge, actually. I have to give a shout out to our student engagement and leadership. They have the certified peer educator micro credential. And that one is actually in partnership with an external organization that's verified this credential. So it's their training program. So that's another important aspect of micro credentials, is that verifiability. Like, who is verifying these skills? Is it a subject matter expert, like a faculty member? Is it a business that is consulting on it, saying, these are the skills that we're looking for, or some sort of accrediting external organization. So, for example, another micro-credential that we have in the works that I actually just have to go put in Canvas Credentials, otherwise it's all set to go, is a Career Search All-Star from our Career Services Department. And that one is in cooperation with Indeed. So it will have like the Indeed logo on that micro-credential. So it's not just verified by Yavapai College, but also by Indeed.
Right. Absolutely.
And the importance of that is employers, just using Yavapai College as an example, they trust our degree and our certificate programs. So then when we are willing to put our name on this micro-credential and say we have verified this, then employers can trust that when a student is saying, I have this professionalism micro-credential or this communication, they can trust that skill is something that has been evaluated by someone with expertise in that area.
Right. That's super exciting. That's very cool.
Yeah, I think I went a little off track, though. I don't think I quite answered your question.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to get an idea. You answered it partly. So maybe we kind of go a little bit further here and then just tell me, like, give me more examples of what are some of these micro credentials that we're offering right now? Just so, what subjects are available right now, and like you mentioned there that this is not just for staff. So that's great. So that we got that out of the way. We only have one student right now, but the idea, since this is so new, is that this is going to be expanding, to everyone, students, staff, faculty, and everybody else that needs this. But what are some of the subjects that we're offering right now?
All right. So, for the staff and the faculty professional development ones, we've offered everything from, let me back up a little bit. So we have what's called a micro-credential taxonomy. And basically what that is like your categories of micro-credentials.
Right.
So different levels of micro-credentials indicate a different level of mastery. So we have everything from a participation badge, meaning I showed up and I committed time to this.
Okay.
But essentially, like, knowledge or skills weren't verified. It was just I came and I did the 2 hours, and it shows like that commitment to learning.
Okay.
And then we have like skill or knowledge badges. So a knowledge badge might be like, I took this course and I passed a quiz that showed that I can talk about this. I have a basic understanding.
Right.
Whereas a skill badge would show that I have applied this in some way. For example, going back to your examples, you mentioned research. So if you took a quiz on how to use library resources to conduct research, that would be a knowledge level badge.
Okay.
But then when you go and you do that and someone verifies that you've met mastery and you've applied these research skills to write a paper, then you have a skill level badge. And that can go all the way up to an ability level, ability being I've consistently shown this skill. So that might be through like an internship or a club or organization or over an entire course. So one of the things you asked was, the length of time to earn a micro-credential. And that's really going to depend on the micro-credential.
Right.
So the Career Search All-Stars with Indeed is a knowledge level badge. So students engage with some videos and have to pass quizzes, but essentially could complete it maybe in an afternoon.
Okay.
Whereas if we were to put a micro-credential on a management certificate through the business program, that still requires a certain number of credit hours and a certain number of classes. So it could be a semester or a year long.
It'll take the length of that course that they're taking.
Yeah, exactly. So as far as like what we're currently offering, like I said, currently, professional development, but the goal for the future over the next academic year would be to develop those durable skills, soft skills, micro-credentials in communication, critical thinking. We're using the NACE career competencies. NACE is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And we're really looking at what we already offer and what gaps we have and what we should develop. So part of offering these is, working with the REDC and the Regional Economic Development Center, because they offer a lot of like Coursera type courses.
Right.
That would be maybe a knowledge level. But then we have our students taking a communications class or an English class that are, developing a skill or an ability in these areas. So really looking at how are we going to embed these career competencies throughout what we already offer, and then what can we start to offer in addition to make sure that we're providing these for students in flexible ways.
I love it. That's super cool. Well, essentially, like you can be getting all these micro credentials along with all of the other credentials that you're getting in many different departments and different areas of the college. You can be taking a course through Coursera with the REDC and getting a micro credential associated with that course that you're taking. I mean, it's just kind of piling up all these credentials. So you're literally kind of building up your resume and your credentials. Not to repeat, because this is what we want once we show up and we're applying for a new job, a promotion, or something like that. These credentials are just validating that you are qualified and, you've got the expertise and it's been checked, and endorsed to a certain degree here by Yavapai College.
Exactly. And while, again, we're still in phase 1, we're still rolling this out, I would say the goal in the future is that micro-credentials are just going to be part of, I like the phrase ecosystem, part of the educational ecosystem here. Like it's going to be embedded in our programs and in our courses. So when a student leaves here with a certificate or a degree, they're also going to have micro-credentials. But then we're also going to be out in the community working with employers and working with the workforce and offering those credentials for them. A great example is we used the example of artificial intelligence earlier. So Robin Bryce, lots of people know her. Yeah. She just did an artificial intelligence training for area K-12 schools. And we're providing a micro-credential for them to show that they participated in this training and they can, effectively use AI in their classrooms or in their teaching practices.
Very cool.
So definitely looking to expand on what we've done so far with internal professional development, but then start to really apply that in academics as well as out in the workforce and through partnerships.
Very cool. I was going to ask you here if there are success stories from learners who have benefited from YC's micro-credential programs. I guess Robin Bryce is right there. That's one example. Are there any other stories that you can think of right now that someone who has really benefited from it, got a new job from having these micro-credentials, or anything that we can, it's a fairly new program, but what else do we have to, just show how successful this is going to be? It is and is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have any personal examples. Like I said, this is still pretty new and just rolling out, but we've consulted with other colleges that are a little further along in the micro-credential programs at their institutions.
Yeah.
And one of those colleges, they have a IT help desk micro-credential that they offer. And they were able to share a story of a student who, I think she got something like 3 or 5 internship offers because of the micro-credential that she had.
So cool.
So just a great example of, as she's continuing her education, that internship course, it's a part of a requirement of her degree program. But because she had this IT help desk micro-credential, which involved, basic IT help skills. I'm not IT, so I don't know what that involves. But but as well as customer service and communication. So customer service and communication was part of that micro-credential. So it was because she had this micro-credential that she was able to secure those internships and then, continue along that path.
Right. Which, by the way, it kind of leads me here to my last question that I had for you. This has the potential to eventually become something that employers are going to require their employees to acquire, right? Sort of to maintain their level of proficiency in their work and everything else. Do we have a plan for the future here to sort of start engaging industries and employers around our community here to sort of develop a partnership where we can provide them with these micro-credentials so they can continue to, invest in their workforce and so forth? I mean, is there anything in the future for us to consider that? Like, are we reaching out at this point to anybody, to any, community or businesses or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are currently, I do know we have 2 micro-credentials that we are still in the process of developing. So these are actually trainings that have already happened, but we owe the micro-credentials to the participants that were, I believe, with Spectrum Health was one of them.
Oh, nice.
And there was another one. So we have some partnerships that we have already done that, basically. We've already partnered with them and provided this micro-credential specific to their industry or their organization. But some of the next steps that we're looking at, like I mentioned, with those NACE career competencies and those soft skills, is working with our career services department, our internships coordinator, our business programs, eventually, other programs.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the hurdles with anything new and micro-credentials is still fairly new, not just here at Yavapai, but just fairly new. I think I first heard about micro-credentials maybe 3 years ago. And that doesn't mean that they didn't exist before them. That's just when I became aware of them. It might have been
called something else, or we knew it as something else.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that being relatively new, it takes time for people to really understand their value, understand what they mean or what they represent.
Right.
So recently in a reading that I was doing, it said that, there was a survey, I think it was something like 300 HR representatives. They're starting to see these micro-credentials show up on resumes.
Oh.
Employers are still trying to figure out what they are.
Right.
So a lot of our goals over the next year is to be out in the community. We have some connections with the Chamber of Commerce, making sure that we're communicating to employers, what these micro-credentials mean, what value they can bring to their organizations, how we can partner with them, to ensure that their employees have access to these upskilling and training and, lifelong learning opportunities. And also how we can use their feedback and how they can become involved in developing our micro-credential, ecosystem. I'll use that word again.
Yep.
So that way there's really just creating this partnership between our workforce and the college.
I love it. Sounds like you're going to be busy.
Yes. I'm excited, though. I'm really excited about the opportunities that this is going to bring just to, further our initiatives and our opportunities for our students.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Well, speaking of that, how can our students, faculty, members of the community get to you and reach out to you and learn more about our micro-credentials programs here at Yavapai College?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to learn more about micro-credentials, we have a website on the Yavapai College website. So it's yc.edu/badges. That will take you to just a kind of an overview of what micro-credentials are, what the benefits are, and what you do with a micro-credential.
Absolutely.
I think there's been times I've even gotten, when I was new to micro-credentials, like I said, 3 years ago when I was just hearing about what they were, I got this email and I'm like, great. I got a sticker in my email. What do I do with it? So really trying to provide that education of, what value it has and how to use it, and from there's a link to our Canvas credentials that shows all of the, micro-credentials or digital badges that we're offering right now. And like I said, that most of those are professional development focused, but we're trying to get a lot more student and community facing ones on there as well. So then, explore that. And when you get a micro-credential email, go claim it, set up your Canvas Credentials account, like when it says like you've earned this badge, and share it on social media and share the great work and the learning that you're doing.
I love it. Well, that's going to be our follow-up episode of the podcast here. We need to go through how to get it, where do you go to get it, what do you do with it when you get it, how to take advantage of this opportunity. But again, this is probably more, it's more detail that we can share in the next couple of minutes here. So I'll love to have you back on the show here so that we can kind of go over that, because I think that's also very important since this is all very new. I don't want people to think that this is the kind of, it's a sticker that you get in the mail that you may or may not put on your water bottle. That's not what this is. There's a functionality for these micro-credentials, these digital badges, or however we want to call it. And it's really important. And it's going to be instrumental in the future of career development, right? Like this is going to be so common, hopefully so common and so embedded in how we further our careers and education and everything else that we need to know what to do with it and how to use it properly.
Yeah, absolutely. I probably should have mentioned this earlier when you asked me what micro-credentials were, but I love to compare it to like Boy Scout or Girl Scout badges.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
right.
Like you had to tie a certain number of knots or a certain number of kinds of knots, and then you got your knot badge, but somebody verified that you did that.
Exactly.
And that you had that knowledge or that skill. And, it's not just a Yavapai College initiative. It's a statewide, nationwide, international initiative. I've read a lot of research on micro-credentials coming out of, the UK and New Zealand and lots of other areas. So this is definitely something that it's not going away. It's going to grow. So, and it's definitely going to grow here at the college. So yes, I would love to have a follow-up conversation with you talking about, like I said, right now we're just now starting out. So maybe 3-6 months from now, I'll have a lot more information for you.
A lot more stories to tell as well. We'll make sure that we have you back here before then so that we can give everyone an update.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Christina, I thank you very much for being here with us and explaining, everything about micro-credentials. This is very exciting. And I look forward to kind of getting some updates sometime soon.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Thank you for tuning in to the YCNU podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation today. Don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got someone in mind for our next chat? Reach out and let us know. Until next time, keep exploring, and we'll see you next week.